Now a swing and a drive in the air to right field. This is deep. This is way back. This is going, and gone. Goodbye. Bang, zoom goes James Wood with a majestic, soaring, high fly ball home run that comes down in section 140, just to the left of the bullpen. And James Wood has himself another leadoff home run. That is his 5th this year and the 8th of his career. Bang! Zoom goes James Wood. He has tied this game. It's the Nationals 1 and the Mariners 1.
Charlie Slows yesterday on 106.7 The Fan, home of the Washington Nationals. Yeah, there were championships won over the weekend, and the World Cup is underway. But locally, the Nats, they're the highest scoring team in Major League Baseball, and they just won their 5th series in their last 6, and are 2 games above 500 as we approach the midpoint of the 2026 season. Oh, and by the way, James Wood is on fire. Good morning, everybody. We'll get to the Knicks. We'll get to Carolina in the NHL's Stanley Cup Finals. We'll get to the latest on Brandon Ayuk. We'll get to Stephon Diggs and something he said locally over the weekend. A lot on the show today. Our football team opens up mini camp tomorrow, their final get-together before 5 weeks off, and then they'll reconvene at the end of July for training camp. We'll hear from coaches this week. We'll hear from the quarterback this week. That starts tomorrow. Ben will join us in his normal spot at 12. Man, the Nationals are really starting to enter that part of the calendar, I think, where they have to be taken somewhat seriously. They were predicted to have the 2nd worst record in terms of win total before the season started. And here they are, like right in the mix of the National League wild card contenders. Now, they're in a division right now that has the Atlanta Braves, who have the best record in baseball, which I think is surprising, too. I don't think anybody expected that from Atlanta. Atlanta also is a very good offensive baseball team as well. So it'd be better if they were in another division where they were, instead of being 9.5 games out of first, they were more like 4 or 5 games out of first. The team they just beat, Seattle, 2 out of 3, is the American League West leader, a game over 500. So the Nats actually, if they were in the American League West right now, would be in first place. But they're very much in the wild card race at 37-35, 72 games into the season, 9 short of the midway point of the season. And James Wood is on absolute fire. He is on a heater, 10 for 21 in his last 5 games with 3 home runs and 5 RBIs. Clearly, he is having an all-star season, and this is totally unexpected. You know, if this is a month ago, yeah, it's attention-grabbing because of the runs they're scoring, but you don't think it's sustainable. At what point will they revert to what everybody expected? The longer this goes on, the longer and the quicker turnaround in terms of people starting to recognize that this is a pretty good team. We'll see if it holds up. But right now, there is no doubt, along with Chicago in the American League Central, the White Sox, the Nats and the White Sox right now, the 2 most surprising teams in the big leagues in 2026 as we approach the halfway mark. This from CGG. CGG writes, Kevin, I'm not the biggest fan of your show, but I listen because it's the only thing on when I head to lunch. I can't believe you didn't see the Knicks coming. The Spurs were an absolute mess early in this season, and their arrogance got the best of them. They thought they won the championship when they beat Oklahoma City. There is some truth to that. You know, there was some arrogance. There was probably some overconfidence. You know, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Actually, I think as we discuss Victor Wembanyama today, that's part of the conversation when it comes to Victor Wembanyama. There's a fine line between sort of confidence and arrogance. Look, it's very hard to find all-time superstars, individual superstars in team sports that didn't flirt with the incredibly confident and somewhat arrogant line. Okay, that's fine. And there's a certain level of even, false confidence that you have to be at that level. But man, I can't recall a player and a team being more of a darling 2.5 weeks ago and turning more this quickly into villains like the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama did. Thanks, by the way, for listening for whatever reason you're listening, CGG. I appreciate that. And I did not see the Knicks coming. That is true. Max actually picked the Knicks to win this series. Baby. You picked them to win it in 6, if I recall.
That is correct.
Yeah. Max saw it coming. I did not see it coming. Although, unlike what I had said during much of the postseason, where I said nobody from the East is going to beat anybody from the West. Whoever emerges from the West will have an easy route to the finals. I mean, last year I thought the same thing, and it took 7 games for Oklahoma City. I did think it was going to be Oklahoma City the whole way. I did. And I still think if Jalen Williams was healthy for Game 7, or just for that series in general, they may have been the team taking on the Knicks. But injuries are a reality. They happen, and they derail, seasons and series, as they did for Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. But I did think at the beginning of the series, because I ended up picking the Spurs in 7, I thought that it was doable for the Knicks because there was some stuff that you were starting to see a little bit with the Spurs. And part of it was the overconfidence. Look, man, the story in New York are the Knicks and Jalen Brunson. And it was an all-time playoff run in terms of point differential, blew away the Warriors from about 10 years or 11 years ago, or 9 years ago, by 53 points in terms of margin, total point margin during a playoff run. I mean, they were dominant. They were absolutely dominant. They literally won 16 games, lost 3, and the 3 they lost were by a point, and 4 points. They were an incredible team that came together at the right time. For those that don't know, they finished 3rd in the East. They were the 3 seed heading into this thing. Most people thought heading into this thing, it would be the Celtics, the 2 seed, that would emerge because the Pistons, the 1 seed, just weren't ready. The Cavs, some people thought I just would never, ever pick a team with James Harden on it. And then Celtics got beat, shooting too many threes that they didn't make in the first series. And the Knicks just got on a roll, and they absolutely earned it. They deserved it. They were a team. They hit their stride at the right time. Do you know that at one point this year, they went through an 11-game stretch where they were 2-9? And they just went through an unbelievable run. If from Game 3 on, I mean, it was an amazing 15-1 run. 15-1. And then they won the game the other night in San Antonio, so it didn't have to come back for a Game 6, which would have been very interesting in terms of Victor Wembanyama's availability, because they totally ignored another flagrant in that game on Saturday night. And it would have been his 4th flagrant. It would have led to an automatic suspension for the next game, but they could have gone back and reviewed it after the fact and given him a flagrant had San Antonio won the game and suspended him. Who thinks they were going to do that? Not me. He got treated like the golden boy of the NBA, and he did not handle it well. More on him in a moment. I'm not and I haven't been at times, a big fan of the way the Knicks played previous years. Way too much ISO, too much ball sticking with Brunson. It happened, they reverted back to it a couple of times in this series. I actually thought they reverted to it in the game that they just closed San Antonio out for multiple series. But I got to say, man, this dude is a flat-out killer, a flat-out shot maker. And this was not, a 12 for 34 with, 18 of 22 from the free throw line. He was over 50% from the field. Jalen Brunson was at 14 for 27, 4 for 7 from behind the arc, 13 of 15 from the free throw line. Not a lot of assists, but not a lot of turnovers. 3 and 3. He had that 5 and 5 in game 3, which really hurt the Knicks in that game. And he was much more of a scorer. I'll tell you what, there were a couple of moments you could tell. I mean, the Victor Wembanyama clear flagrant when he not only gets in his landing area off a made 3, all right, but you could see him pointing his foot in a direction in hopes that Brunson would land on his foot, roll his ankle, and maybe be out. How they missed that, I don't know. They missed a couple of them during the postseason. I mentioned it all the way through the postseason. Man, he is becoming and then finally deciding he is a dirty player. He's just a dirty player, period. He's a sore loser, too. Sore loser, walking off the court without shaking, any Knicks' hands, as Brunson sought him out, actually. But, man, that flagrant and a couple of mouthy, words in his direction, he took the game over in the second half, in particular in the fourth quarter. And what really was another one of those games in which it looked like San Antonio would win the game. It is remarkable what the Spurs did in this series. They basically had, and I'm not a big win probability guy. It's not really what you can watch the game and have a sense on whether or not the team that's in the lead, it deserves to be there and should win the game. But, based on pure mathematics, they had a 90% win probability in all 5 games and only won one of them. I mean, really quite remarkable. According to ESPN Analytics, in the 4 games the Spurs lost, they had a 91.6% chance of winning game 1 up 13 midway through the third. They had an 80, I'm sorry, so not all of them were at 90. They had an 88% chance in game 2, and then with a minute left, they still had a 73% chance up to a 99.6% chance in game 4, obviously, when they were up 29. And then a 95.4% chance in game 5 when they were up 10 with 7:54 left in the fourth quarter before Jalen Brunson took the game over. Really good basketball team. He deserved the MVP. Now that we have 5 games in the book, I mean, it's an all-time performance in a closeout game, the 45, and what he did. Anunoby was certainly headed towards potential MVP consideration. Cat, after the first 2 games, Karl Anthony Towns was certainly in contention, but the foul trouble killed him over the final 3 games, certainly over the 2 of the final 3. They were a team, and everybody knew their role. Everybody had a role, and they played it perfectly. And they ended up winning the title, and New York's going crazy. I don't get all the violence. It's just so stupid. But that is all time for New York sports fans. All time. The Knicks are beloved in that town. It had been since 73. Those teams of the early 70s with Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier and Dave DeBusschere and Bill Bradley, Phil Jackson, those teams were beloved in New York sports history. Kind of the same way we revere the Gibbs teams of the 80s and 90s in football. Those Knick teams were revered, and it had been 53 years since they had won the title. Same kind of thing with the way we revere our glory years teams, under Gibbs. And it's been a long, long time. The Knicks have had more swings at it in the finals with really good teams over the years. We had to suffer through mostly bad years and bad teams and have had to do that. But this is going to go down in New York sports history as one of the most beloved teams because they were a team. You can definitely now argue that the Knicks are the first team since the 04 Pistons, unless you want to go back to the Spurs team that won it when Duncan was sort of older. Although Kawhi was on that team, and ended up being the MVP of the finals, but he wasn't quite yet a top 5 player. But you can now say that definitively the Knicks are the first team since the '04 Pistons to win the title without an obvious top 5 player in the league on their roster. Because Brunson is great, don't get me wrong. He is really, really good, but he's not a top 5 player, in my opinion. You know, he was not a he was a second team player, all NBA player. You know, SGA, Jokic, Wembanyama, Doncic, Cade Cunningham, first team all NBA, and then Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Donovan Mitchell, and then Jalen Brunson on the second team. I guess, you know, somebody could make the argument with the way he played the postseason, he's a top 5 player in the league, but no one would have said that before the playoffs started. Now, I want to get to the Spurs, and then I want your reaction as well, especially on the way Victor Wembanyama handled himself during this series and afterwards. 301-230-0980. Phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. Anything on the NBA Finals? Great playoffs, I thought, for the most part. I thought a very compelling and super intense NBA championship series, even though it only went 5 games. There were a lot of storylines throughout, and the games themselves were just incredibly competitive and intense. We've got the all-time comeback ever. We've got an all-time closeout game in terms of points. 301-230-0980. And we had a guy that came into the NBA Finals as the darling of the NBA and perhaps the greatest that will ever play the game. People were saying that. I was kind of on board, not going to lie. And he leaves a bit of a villain. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Here comes Fox. 5 seconds remaining. Fox to Wemby. Wemby tries a three, puts it up, off the mark. Anunoby the rebound. It's over. It's over. Knicks fans, this is not a dream. Your long, long wait has ended. Go ahead and cry. After 53 years, the Knicks are finally NBA champions once again.
Mike Breen on the call Saturday night as the Knicks beat the Spurs to win the 2026 NBA Finals 4-1. They were an underdog coming into the series. The Eastern champion would have been a massive underdog, and were a massive underdog against any Western champion. Just go back a month. The Knicks were the better team. They deserved it. And it was quite amazing, I think, just to watch it. And at the same time, I think one of the big storylines coming out of it for non-New Yorkers is Victor Wembanyama, and how he went from literally being discussed just 30 days ago, maybe 20 days ago, as you just have to watch it to believe it. He's going to potentially be the greatest that's ever played the sport, to a much different conversation now. He's pouty, he's whiny, he's dirty, and he turned himself into the villain in literally 2 weeks. Amazing that he was able to pull that off. So I want to talk about him for a moment. And the Spurs as a team to a lesser degree. The Knicks are deserving. They're deserving of all the conversation. But I think as sports fans, as NBA fans, I mean, Wembanyama was the story throughout the playoffs. He was the story heading into the Western Conference Finals, into the NBA Finals, and his reputation took a massive hit. The good on Victor Wembanyama, he is ridiculously talented, ridiculously skilled for somebody his size, and already an absolute defensive force like we've not seen many times previously. As far as the rest of it, I'll preface what I'm going to say with, he's 22, be patient, things change. People grow up, people change physically, but from a maturity standpoint, he's 22. And a lot of the he's 22 showed up over the last couple of weeks. So as far as the rest of it, beyond the incredible talent and skill, and the defensive force that he absolutely is. First of all, let me just focus on his game. The defensive part is acknowledged. It just isn't there offensively. You know, he's 7'5", thinks he's a guard, prefers to play guard and on the perimeter. And for a 7'5" guy, he's more capable of playing a backcourt position more than any other 7'5" guy that's ever played in the history of the game. That's true. But he's not a great guard. His handle is great for a 7'5" guy, but not really that great for an NBA guard. You know, we just marvel at it because of how tall he is. He's a really good outside shooter for a 7'5" guy, but he's far from a great outside shooter. He needs so much polish to his offensive game. And more than anything else, in my opinion, he needs a mindset change. He needs to start with, at 7'5", my biggest offensive advantage is closer to the basket, not further away from it. So that, to me, is the basketball part of it. I'll add, though, he needs to get physically stronger. Of course, he's 22, he's 7'5", he's still growing into this, body. He might get taller. And he needs to get in better shape, because many times in these playoffs, he faded down the stretch. And I don't think it was because he was scared. I don't think he cowered from the situation. I think he was gassed in most of those situations. So that's the negative part of the game. Then you get into what kind of player he is beyond the actual skill part and talent part. He's a dirty player, period. He got tossed from a game against Minnesota with a flagrant elbow against Naz Reid. He swung those elbows multiple times during the playoffs, looking to knock people out. He was one flagrant away from a suspension, which should have happened the other night on Saturday night. That was not only a flagrant by definition of the rule. You could tell he looked down and he wanted Jalen Brunson to land on the space that he didn't give him after the jump shot, with hopefully the result being an injury. He is right now more arrogant than he is confident. It's a fine line. Talked about it earlier in the show. It's a fine line, arrogance and confidence. And you would say the same thing, many of you would. It's hard to find all-time superstars that didn't have a certain level of arrogance. Look, the thing that I should also say that I love about him, I do love how feisty and competitive he is. I love that he's not a shrinking violet, that he's not soft. He's not any of those things. But right now, a bit too cocky and not as confident as he is cocky. You know, he thought and pretended and posed like this thing was over when they beat the Thunder. He celebrated like the title was won. And then down 3-1 after the loss of the big lead in Game 4, I mean, he basically said, we're the better team. We're going to, and predicted a win, Namath style. During games, he's pointing to his head. I'm in your head. I'm in your head. And then totally faded down the stretch. Absolute non-factor down the stretch in this series. Non-factor, except for Game 1, when he hit a bunch of shots to get him back into it and then had a chance to win the game at the end and didn't get it done with the jump shot. Of course, it was a jump shot. He looked weak. He looked tired. He looked gassed. He looked really, really like a guy that ran mouth too much at times during the series, dirtied up games at times, and was expecting to get, everything to go his way, and it didn't. And he didn't play confidently down the stretch. I think it was much more about the shape he was in, less about him being fearful. I don't think he fears anything. But I'll just go back to what I said after saying all of that. And that is, he's 22. Be patient. Things change. Things almost always change with 22-year-olds. And then I'll add to this one last thing. No class at all. Total sore loser at the end of that game. They got beat. They got beat when they could have certainly had a chance to make this series a lot different, given the leads they had in these games. But they didn't do it because they couldn't close. And the other team had the adult on the team. They had the closer on the team. I think there's a certain edge, there's a certain chippiness, there's a certain level of competitiveness, and it's hard to judge people in those moments. It is, but to walk off the court without shaking anybody's hand, and with Brunson seeking him out and him blowing Brunson off, sore loser. So he's got a lot and a long way to go, a lot to improve on, a long way to go offensively as a basketball player. And then there is some work to do overall. First of all, it doesn't have to start with being a gracious loser, okay? There have been plenty of sore losers that have come back and won championships, plural, and they're just sore losers. Whatever. I'm not necessarily knocking it. It's not my preference for somebody like him, but I'll chalk it up to age, or I'll chalk it up to his feistiness and his competitiveness, whatever, and how crushed he was that they lost, because I do think he was crushed. But he's got to come back, and he's got to talk less, don't dirty up the game as much, and do more when the game's on the line, because he didn't do that. Long way to go for Victor Wembanyama. Rush to judgment. We talked about this last week or the week before after the first game or second game, and I was a part of it. I was trying to convince all of you, like I have with Jokic in recent years. You got to watch this guy. It's different. It's totally different. This guy may end up becoming the all-time best at everything. Everybody was talking about him that way. No. Watching him in these finals, long, long way to go offensively, and a long way to go on a lot of fronts. It's hard to do what he just did. It is. If they had lost Game 7 in Oklahoma City, none of this would be an issue. Although I would say, because I started to say during that series, when he knocked Naz Reid nearly out in the Minnesota game, I said there's a line that he is apparently willing to cross. Being, physical, being competitive, being chippy, standing up for yourself, because he took a beating in these playoffs, and then being flat out dirty, looking to hurt somebody. He was looking to hurt Jalen Brunson on Saturday night. It would have been so interesting had they won that game somehow, and we were looking at a Game 6 on Wednesday night, what the NBA would have done with that. I have a feeling they would have done what they did the other night, which is not call it a flagrant after the fact so that he could play. And on one level, I'd want him to play. I'd want to see it. But he would have deservedly been suspended had the league gone back and said, yeah, it wasn't called in the moment, but we are retroactively giving him a flagrant, which means he's now exceeded the number of flagrants or matched the number of flagrants that equal suspension. And he could have been, that would have been the right answer, even though I would have preferred to have watched him play. And I think ultimately the NBA would have figured out a way to say, yeah, it was inadvertent or something like that, and not called it a flagrant. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Anything on these NBA finals and Victor Wembanyama in particular? Max, did you have any thoughts on the team that you picked to win the title or the losing team?
So I mean, basketball wise, not really, but it's just really fun to watch, like, the New York celebration. Like, it's been a long time coming for the city. I do think that there was something to the Knicks, like, just drubbing everybody in the East, laying waste. It was really impressive this whole series. Like, they were down, but never out of it, kept clawing back, and it finally won the title, man. It's really cool to see New York looking like the way it is. And just people in the streets. It really reminded me of when the Caps won in 2018, just the pure unbridled joy that was going on throughout the whole city. So it was really nice reminder of that too. So happy for Knicks fans, happy for New York.
Let's get to the phone calls. Let's start with Skip. Skip, go ahead.
Kevin, as you always do, you so eloquently stated everything that needs to be said about Wemby, but I will, before I talk about the Knicks, because I want to talk about the winners, I will say this. If he had just accepted Jalen's outreach at the end and gave him a nice, congratulations, that would have made everything look differently. People would have said, okay, he had a rough series in many ways and the flagrant fouls and all that, but at least he was gracious loser at the end. And I think people would look at it differently if he had just done that. Now he looks like Isaiah Thomas.
Skip, that's so funny. I swear to God, I was just going to say, as you were talking, I'm like, those Pistons have never been able to live that down. It's always been a part of those late 80s, early 90s Pistons when they walked off the floor. Now, that was before the end of the game, essentially, when the Bulls finally beat them. And now that's different because they were champions and it really made them look petty. He has an actual answer, not him, but people will make that answer for him, which is he's 22 and he's wildly immature at this point, which appears to be true. And everybody understands there is often a big difference between a 22-year-old and a 32-year-old. Massive difference. So, but I was just thinking about those Pistons right before you said it. Go ahead.
So I'd like to talk about the winners.
Yeah.
The Knicks, before the series, I said, would Jalen Brunson be able to get his shot off? I thought he would. And I also said that OG was going to be key in the series, which he was. However, Brunson was not able to get his shot off for the first, I'd say, 2.5 games, except for maybe the end of games. And like you said, he was dominating the ball too much and wasn't moving it around and waiting till the end of the shot clock. So I mean, actually, the Spurs, could have won a lot of those games. And I thought he did figure it out in the last half of the fourth game, the big comeback. And the final game, he definitely figured it out. Not wait till the end of the shot clock. If he was going to try to get a shot, get it early, when they weren't closing in on him. And I think a lot of subtle things that a smart veteran player would do to figure out in real time how to get his shot off at 6'2" against these great defenders. And I mean, Castle is a great defender, and obviously Wemby is an all-time great defender. And he was able to do it, including against Wemby, that incredible layup.
Yeah.
Using his body against Wemby to get the shot off.
He plays angles. He has that feel around the rim. He knows when to stop and fade and knows when to get it off. And there's just a great feel for shot making that he has. He understands how much space he needs to create. I don't love the way the Knicks play at times, but they played a lot better offensively in this postseason than they did last postseason. But I do think the ball sticks too much. I think they ask almost too much of Brunson as a ball handler, especially against a great defender like Castle. I think for me, by the way, let me just mention this because I haven't. I think Stephon Castle out of this entire postseason became one of my favorite players that I really didn't know his game before this postseason began. And look, there were moments for him shooting-wise, especially the other night. It was a disaster. But there is something about the way he's got killer in him start to finish, and he is a true lockdown defender. He's just got to get a bit more consistent on his shot. But yeah, Castle, Harper too to a certain degree, but Castle, there's something about watching him and you're like, he's going to be a part of a championship team at some point. It'll probably be this one. Probably. Although I'm going to tell you right now, I think OKC bounces back next year.
One final point. Let's not forget the Knicks defense. They are an excellent defensive team. I mean, OG, even Cat was playing better defense. Josh Hart is a really good defender. They just have a bunch of guys that know how to play the game right.
I'll tell you what, they rebounded the S out of the ball in that game the other night. And even before the foul trouble, I think, Karl Anthony Towns had like 8 rebounds in the first half. Robinson came in. I think he finished with double-digit rebounds in like 18 minutes or something like that. 10 rebounds in 20 minutes.
He's excellent.
He was so big for them. Yeah, and Anunoby rebounded well. Yeah, all of those things were true. Thanks, Skip, as always. Let's go to Kurt in Hagerstown. Kurt, go ahead.
Kevin, thanks for taking my call. I listen to your show because you're the most intelligent sports talk radio show host, man. That's
Probably
why I listen.
But thank you.
That's for sure, man. Guaranteed. Hey, so this team, it reminds me of like a throwback, like late 90s, early 2000s. This is going to be something that you bring up when you debate against the superior talent of this generation. And what I was telling the host, your guy I called into, you can't measure the IQ and the heart when it comes to putting it against somebody's talent that you see. And you see how these young kids' talent is off the chart. But what I saw was the heart and the determination, and also not only the coaching, but the IQ on how you can slow a game down. You can make it possession by possession. Even if you're getting blown out, you can come back if you just take it one possession at a time. And it's something a lot of the old school games and a lot of old school players mastered. They look a lot like the Philadelphia 76ers with Iverson to me, with a little more firepower. Which would have been a championship team if you take Shaq out of the picture.
And Shaq and Kobe,
Shaq did, of course, Kobe, but it would have been a little bit even seeing Kobe go against Iverson without Shaq just completely dominating, taking over games when he needed to, which we didn't see Wembanyama do. which he's got to learn. He's got to get stronger and get more physical and get around that basket and become a center before he's a supersized Steph Curry Durant, with the same attitude as like the Durant.
Yeah,
I don't
he's
like it.
He's got to develop some low post dominating, unstoppable moves, which at his height, with his skill, with his hands, with his touch, he should be able to score 40. He should be able to have a 50-point night where he shoots no more than 2 threes in the game. Literally. I mean, I don't. He doesn't appear to desire that part of the game yet. They got to make him desire that.
I don't see it until he gets bigger in his lower body, because a lot of guys that know about banging down low, and I know you played a lot of ball and coach, when you get your hips on somebody, when you actually start when you start moving people out with your body, when you have a disadvantage. I'm like 5'11", but I'm built like a power forward. So you know what I mean? You gotta use what you have. You gotta use your body, and a lot of times you can take people out of position just by being strong, and it wears on them. It's like a boxer when they get to the 8th and 9th round. They're not the same guy as they were in the first and second round. And I saw that. I saw that a lot. And he's gonna have to work on that before I see anything. Like when people start talking about the greatest of all time. He's got to get stronger.
He's got to get in better shape. Those things will come, obviously, as long as he's got that work ethic. He's also going to get the credit when Castle and Harper's attitude and defense is what's going to win them championships in the near future. And Wembanyama is going to get all the credit. So they're not winning any championship without Wembanyama taking the next step. I mean, I love Castle and Harper too, but the reason they're going to contend here for several years to come is going to be because of him. And I think it's going to be really interesting as a basketball fan to watch, to see if he evolves, to see if he matures, to see if he grows, not just in personality on the court, off the court, but in his game, because he's got a ways to go. Kurt, thanks. As always, really appreciate it. Everybody on hold, stay there. We'll do some more calls on the NBA Finals being over, the Knicks winning in 5. That is obviously the number one story for New York fans, for sure. But I think a lot of NBA fans and even sports fans are talking about Victor Wembanyama, who turned himself amazingly in almost a 2-week period from golden child, future all-time best to ever do it, to a borderline villain. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Yes. Mark sent this to me. He said, "Did you know that Mitch Johnson didn't know the shot clock rules at the end of Game 5?" So, Mitch Johnson, the head coach of the Spurs, it was 91-88 Knicks. By the way, that followed, an opportunity for Harper. They missed a lot of shots that they have made. I know De'Aaron Fox missed a lot of shots, obviously. Harper had a layup on one end to tie the game and missed it. That was the big miss. I think that was at 90-88. With 24 seconds left and the Knicks at the free throw line, second free throw was missed. Well, when that happens, the shot clock doesn't go back to 24. It goes to 14. Off of a missed shot, they changed that rule a couple of years ago. It doesn't go from 24 back to a new 24. It goes to 14. So there was actually about a 10 and a half second differential on the shot clock. And he had Luke Cornett go out and foul Anunoby immediately. And that was, they could have played defense up 3. I don't think that's like a massive error because you may want to extend the game rather than potentially give up what would be the game winner at the end of the next 14-second shot clock at around 10 seconds left in the game. But yeah, if he didn't know that rule, that's pretty bad. I think the one thing Mitch Johnson's going to get criticized for more than anything else is sticking with De'Aaron Fox for as much as he did. But I have to tell you, I understand to a certain degree why, even though De'Aaron Fox had an absolute dreadful series, by the way, he was crucial for the Spurs in their Game 7 win against Oklahoma City. That was an absolute key factor in their win in Game 7 against Oklahoma City, where he went 6 for 12 from the floor, 3 for 7 from behind the arc, had 5 assists, 3 steals, 1 turnover, scored 15 points. He was absolutely one of the keys to them getting by the Thunder in Game 7. But he had a dreadful series. He averaged 34.3% from the field, 25% from behind the arc. He had, an assist to turnover ratio that wasn't great, although it wasn't terrible now that I'm looking at it. I thought it was worse. De'Aaron Fox is one of the fastest players, one of the quickest players in the league. It's almost impossible to stay in front of him. His decision-making wasn't great. He couldn't make shots, especially the other night, in 2 or 3 of the games. And I think, if anything, the criticism for Mitch Johnson would be, why not Harper more for Fox? That, I think, would be fair. But I get it with De'Aaron Fox. Like, he is one of the quickest, fastest players in the league. And the Knicks were a good defensive team. And so he created the ease and separation of getting into their offense. I thought at times the Spurs didn't push the ball enough. Let's go to Cole. Cole, go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Kevin, how are you?
I'm great, Cole. How are you?
I'm doing well. Look, man, I just think the whole thing, this narrative being painted with Wemby, I totally disagree with you as far as him being dirty and all that. I think it's just, look, if the refs are not going to protect you, Kevin, on the basketball court, you have to do what you have to do. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's just instinctful. You know what I mean? You're just like out there battling. And every center I know grew up, I mean, they had to learn how to, do that. You know what I mean? So he doesn't have a power forward that can protect him. So he's getting beat up. He's getting battered.
If they get another big, he's probably the power forward. He doesn't want to play center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but he still has to have that type of muscle out there. I mean, he's playing with
I agree. I agree with that.
He doesn't even have a pure point guard that he's playing with. So now if they would have had the kid from New York, Alvarado, on that team, they'd been more successful. They need somebody like that. But he has to protect himself, Kevin. I mean, I watched the whole play. I'm not a big NBA guy because I just think the game has just changed too much for me, and it becomes boring. But hey, look, man, he got to protect himself. I don't think he's a villain or anything like that. I think he's balling out hard, and sometimes you can't have these American apple pie type guys. You got to have some thuggerism in you, and you got to go out there and ball. You got to do what you got to do to protect yourself and try to win and carry your team. I mean, he has a lot of burdens for 22-year-old, and I'm just saying he'll get better. He'll learn from this. but he needs a lot of assistance. He needs a lot of coaching. As far as support.
Okay, well, I mean, your answer, you're refuting your answer by saying he's going to learn from this. He needs a lot of coaching. I think those things are true, and I also think what you said is the part that's true is he's got to protect himself, and they came after him all postseason long. But multiple things can be true simultaneously. There have been so many social media videos produced on Wemby's dirty play during this postseason. You can find it just by searching Wemby dirty. He was dirty during these playoffs. He tried to hurt people multiple times in the postseason with total cheap shots. And that there's a fine line between protecting yourself, being chippy, being competitive, being physical, and being dirty. I said it 2 weeks ago for the first time. There's a dirty nature to the way he plays. And I don't think that after watching him in this postseason, that's even debatable at this point. But it's also true he does a good job of being physical, being competitive, because he is the target of the other team most games. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get better in terms of endurance. And then he's got to really grow up and keep his emotions in check when it comes to making the plays that cross the line between physical and protecting himself and put him and his team in jeopardy. Because we may be talking today about him being out for game 6. That was a dirty, dirty play against Jalen Brunson. And you see him look down. He is looking for Brunson to land on his feet and hopefully roll an ankle. And you go through some of these plays, he's dirty. It's just not debatable from my standpoint, but he's also super competitive. Yeah.
I can't say he's dirty. I can't say what his intent is, Kevin. You don't know what his intent is of trying to hurt a player. You can't say that.
Yeah, you do. You go back and watch some of the highlights. The elbow that he nearly knocked Naz Reid out is an intentional, dirty elbow. There are 6 or 7 of those examples during the postseason. He's also really physical and protects himself and doesn't back down. All those things are true. Thanks, Cole, for the call. Joe, Ian, Anthony, Lapp, everybody on hold. Stay there. We'll do this for one more segment. Your calls on the NBA Finals. We've got a line open, too, if you want to jump on at 301-230-0980.
Appreciate y'all. See y'all. Never.
That was his press conference at the end, Victor Wembanyama's. I actually don't have a major problem with. I watched it. He got up and walked out before the questions were over. That's not what you do. So I did have a problem with that. But the appreciate y'all, see y'all, never, I think was just more or less kind of a throwaway line, like I'm not going to see you until next year. But yeah, he did not distinguish himself in an adult-like manner at the end of the game the other night, if that's something you care about. Not everybody cares about it. How about a couple of these things real quickly? The Spurs in the 5 games led for 72% of the minutes. 72% of the action in all 5 games, the Spurs had the lead. That's crazy. Victor Wembanyama in the 4th quarter of the NBA Finals, 7.8 points per game, 34.3% from the field, 25% from the three-point line, a negative 20 plus minus rating. He scored 5 points in game 4 and 3 points in the 4th quarter of game 5. I mentioned on Thursday show, they played game 4 on Wednesday night, right? That the worst part of Wembanyama wasn't any sort of dirty play in that particular game. It was the fact that he was yapping up 29, telling, Mitchell Robinson and everybody how much in their head he was. And then he literally disappeared in the 4th quarter as the Knicks were charging back to eventually win that game. Was not much of a factor in the 4th quarter the other night either. He's got to get stronger. He's got to get more endurance, man. And look, game 4, and I did put this on Mitch Johnson. I don't know why he played 44 of 48 minutes in game 4 when they had a 20-plus point lead for a big portion of that game. He should have been sitting in the event that the Knicks actually came back and he needed to be fresh at the end. Was not a great coached series by Mitch Johnson by a long shot. That's for sure. Still nothing resembling the Kenny Atkinson Eastern Conference Finals job. Joe in Springfield, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin. Appreciate you taking my call as always.
Sure.
So I'll start with the Knicks and I'll go with the Spurs. First off, it was right around this time last year. I think that's when Mike Brown was hired to be the head coach of the Knicks. And I thought to myself, something, with the injury of Jason Tatum for the Celtics and the injury that Halliburton had just suffered in Game 7 of the Finals against the Thunder. And by the way, if he hadn't suffered the injury, I think the Pacers could have beaten the Thunder in Game 7. I said, this is the time for the Knicks and the Pistons to step it up. This is their chance. And Mike Brown is good at coaching defense. And that was one of the keys as well this postseason as well. And it's amazing, Kevin, how a couple of weeks ago when they lost Game 3 to Atlanta, how much the city wanted Mike Brown to be fired, and then the Knicks just took off. Yeah. It's amazing what's happened a couple of weeks for that. So
recency bias, that's the world we're living in when it comes to sports for sure, and everything else, but definitely sports.
Exactly. And Jalen Brunson, it was interesting the other night when they were trailing by as much, he had this fire in his eyes. They kept hitting layup after layup in the 2nd quarter that he said, okay, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to – and I thought to myself, are they going to rally and do this behind Brunson? And they did. As for the Spurs, look, I don't know what that previous caller had said before the break about how Wemby is – what do you mean he's defending himself? So he wants to hurt players on purpose? I mean, when he did that purposely on Jalen Brunson, stared down, I literally – and Kevin, I don't do this, and my father and my godfather, who are both from New York, are both big Knicks fans, I jumped out of my seat in my living room like, are you going to call that? And they didn't. And it was amazing. And my father had told me, calm down, they're going to do something. And then at the end of the game, when Wemby literally, after hitting a really bad three-point shot, that was way off the mark, he just calmly walked off the court. And if I'm not mistaken, the only Spurs player who stuck around to shake hands was their backup center, Cornette. Everybody else Wemby led everybody off the floor and didn't seem to care. Wemby is dirty. I understand he has a talent, he has the skill, but he has got to get better. And Mitch Johnson, I do blame him for Game 4 not playing him as much. But Kevin, you got to stop and think for a second. This is a year after Popovich stepped down for health reasons. Popovich would have been in Wemby's face saying, enough is enough. You can't keep doing this. I understand he would have benched his star player. But
yeah,
Popovich
it's an interesting, I think he would have made the change with Fox and maybe Harper. I think Harper would have been in the game for a lot more of the fourth quarters in games 1 and 4 when they lost leads. I think, look, Pop in terms of in-game feel and strategy is one of the all-time best. There's no doubt about that. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
So, Kevin, I hear what everybody's saying about Wemby needs to get bigger and stronger, but people need to recognize what they're looking at. He's only going to get so much bigger and so much stronger.
He might get taller.
But frame-wise, he's Sean Bradley and Manu Bol. He's only going to get so much bigger. So he can't.
Frame-wise, you're
really
right. Frame-wise, you're right. Skill-wise, talent-wise, obviously, there's a massive difference between him and those players.
Oh, yeah. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
So he can't really afford to be down low trying to bump and grind because he can't stand up to it. So on offense, in my opinion, his spot needs to be the Karl Malone spot. Free throw line extended.
Okay, well, let's get more of that.
No, well, I know. That's what I'm saying. In my opinion, he don't need to be out there at the 3-point line. He needs to be free throw line extended, turn around in a triple threat position, and just jump up and shoot over the defender.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and there is an element of if you just kept initiating the offense, if you played high-low with him on the box, if he catches it off on the box, Anthony, even from like a low block screen to another, for him coming sort of across that middle part of the lane off of a low block screen, it's impossible. I don't care if he gets bumped around or not. He can turn and shoot over everybody. He can turn and literally with a jump hook, if he developed one, the jump hook's going to be literally with the ball in his hands coming down through the cylinder. I see a lot more potential than you do as a low block player. I think that it's his preference isn't to do that right now, and they were deferring to what he preferred to do. And by the way, he does the other stuff well, just not at a high level for a guard. High level for 7'5", yes. But those possessions that started with him initiating the offense as a point guard, I can't. That's hard to watch. Hard to watch when he's 7'5".
Him wanting to dribble the ball, there's too much that can go wrong with that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, unless he can get down low and develop a dream shape, or like you say, just do a jump hook. In my opinion, yeah, he can go down low occasionally, but I don't think he'll be able to do it consistently. So again, the Karl Malone spot should be automatic.
Yeah.
Free throw line, elbow.
You might see, you may see him with a bigger guy at some point be a true 4 rather than a 5. I mean, that may be the direction they head. Thanks, Anthony. As always. Ian, go ahead.
I agree with everything you kind of said. I think Wemby has to be more physically mature, but more importantly, more mentally mature. And we talked about this on Friday, that his actions almost look like a faux tough guy, poser a little bit. And I thought that, again, when they celebrated at the end of the Oklahoma City Thunder series, I was a little bit worried that they emotionally emptied the tank. The tennis analogy, you beat Nadal, but then you have Federer in the next round and you can't mentally rebound. That wasn't the case. They clearly had leads in every single game they lost and could have, should have won many of them. So it really comes down to kind of that grit and mental toughness in executing. And when you do the blame pie, of course, Wemby's going to get the lion's share. But yeah, I put a ton on De'Aaron Fox, who you said was exceptional in the OKC series.
No, Game 7. Game 7, he was exceptional.
But he was good throughout the series, I thought.
It was inconsistent, but Game 7, he really played well. I think he was a top 3 reason they won Game 7 at Oklahoma City. I really do.
Absolutely. But the way Harper was playing, and, it's tough with the 19-year-old in Harper and Castle being young and Wemby being young. You want to have De'Aaron Fox be the veteran, but he just didn't have a good series. He's human and it happens, but it's tough. But I mean, looking at next year, I think the Spurs should be the favorite. I feel like this will be such a good learning lesson. And I do think the Spurs have a lot of ability to grow. I think if they add a player here or there, I think they would be my pick to win the championship next year. We've had 8 consecutive.
Right now they're plus 250. They are the very, very slight favorite to win the title next year at plus 250, followed by the Thunder at plus 260, the Celtics at plus 550, and then the Knicks. So they are the slight favorite to win it. I'm going to tell you right now, I have a feeling the Thunder are going to bounce back in a big way next year. Now, let's see what they do with Chet Holmgren.
Right.
Because that's a big part of it. But I actually think I think Oklahoma City would have been a difficult matchup for New York. I really do, had they made the finals. But I also am a big fan of the way they play and a big fan of like their depth ended up hurting them when they lost Jalen Williams. I think if Jalen Williams plays Game 7 or plays the whole series, they would have been in the finals. Personally.
Yeah, it could have been. And to go to Chet Holmgren, Presti's already been on record being like, yeah, he's on this team. He's our future. He's a key cog. Like, they're not moving him, Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's interesting. The Spurs are just barely next year's favorite. Plus 250 versus the Thunder plus 260. Then the Celtics are plus 550. I really thought before the playoffs started, there were 2 clear-cut best teams in each conference, the Celtics and the Thunder. Usually in the NBA, that's what you get. You get the favorites. You didn't this year. You got the Spurs, who I think, Max, they were the second pick in the West, or was Denver? I can't remember the Western Conference championship odds before the postseason. I would bet San Antonio was second behind OKC. But OKC at one point was kind of a massive favorite to win the title. They went through those first 2 series so easily. But we'll see. All right, let's get to Lap. Lap's been on hold for a while. Lap, thanks. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
What's
Shout
up,
out
Lap?
to Max, man. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, Wemby, man, he got raw time. His offensive side of the ball is not really good. He's still got to be more polished. He's a heck of a rebounder, a heck of a defender, and he can definitely disrupt the games with that. Just his antics he was doing and being dirty and stuff, it wasn't cool. He still got to be a leader. He got a lot of, growing up to do, of course. But shout out to the Knicks, man. Shout out to Paulie. I know Paulie probably still partying right now. But they were battle tested. They kept competing even when they were down. You know what I'm saying? And all those 4 games they were down double digits. They still came back. Brunson is the dude. Just amazing. It was awesome to see Mike Brown and Karl Anthony Towns, and I know somebody that knows Hart very well, so I was happy for them too. And then Hart, Brunson celebrating with his family and stuff, man.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you, man,
Brunson. It's hard not to like Jalen Brunson. Like, that dude just seems to have it together in so many different ways. And I've loved Josh Hart for a long time, although I watched him play a lot in high school too. But yeah, great. They were a true team, man. They're a true team. And I'll tell you what, they were much better defensively in the postseason than their players say they should have been. But I'll tell you, the Spurs and OKC that series start to finish was an absolute war. That was so much fun to watch. Thanks, Lap. Appreciate it. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, what's up?
Hey, Kevin. What's up, man? Look, I was going to come at you in a different form, but I realize I care about you a lot, and I understand we get old, and sometimes we lose our train of thought. So here's the way I'm
come
going
at
to
me.
come at you.
You come at me all the time. Why'd you change your mind?
I know, but I was going to put Wemby in the same category with Robert Griffin III, and how the conversation
Wemby in the same category with Robert Griffin III. How so?
Yes, because of his attitude. His attitude stinks. But forget all that. Forget all that.
But how is that coming
Wemby
at me? I
no,
don't understand.
Well, that's neither here nor there. Here's the deal. Forget all that. The reality of the situation is Wemby has no respect for this country. Okay, and that's been more than evident when he doesn't come out for the national anthem. He's frowning when he hears the national anthem, and he's always playing dirty with everybody else. Now,
is that true that he? Hold on, you're revealing something that obviously needs to be fact checked because it is Mark and Largo.
Go to game. I mean, and go throughout the
Max,
season.
does he come out for the national anthem or not?
Yes,
so you're saying he's in the locker room during the national anthem?
He's not in the locker room for the national anthem
when they come out, and that's a problem.
Well, hold on. I want to make sure Mark and Largo always has to be fact checked. So you're saying, Max, he's not in the he's out on the floor during the national anthem
with his hands behind his back and his head.
Yeah, so Mark,
lowered.
it would appear you're wrong about that. What was the other part? He hates this country. He hates the country.
That I can't verify.
Go to game 3. Go to game 3.
Was he in the locker room getting worked on? Is this you might be right. I didn't notice that, and I've never heard that.
Well, if you look at his annex on how he plays, he doesn't. It seems to me like he doesn't respect American-born players,
right?
And how he goes at them playing dirty. He plays dirty.
Well, didn't Draymond make a comment during the finals where he just said European players just in general tend to be dirtier? Was it Draymond who said that? I forget.
Yeah, but okay, fine. I don't see Luka playing like this.
Yeah,
I don't see Joker playing like this.
What point do you want to make here? Let's get to that.
Here's my point.
Yeah.
All right, you want me to get to the point? This
Yes.
is why I called you last week and told you last week that I would take Czar over Wemby. And here's the reason why.
Oh, right.
Because Czar has developed himself more frequently as a low post player and a 3-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
What Wemby, the biggest problem with Wemby, and this is going to be the problem that you have to understand. He's 7'4", 7'5". Okay, fine, well and good. Is he a low post player or a 3-point shooter? And if he's going to be a 3-point shooter, guess what, Kevin? He's got to get a better handle. You just talked about it. If he's going to be in the low post, he's got to put on at least 20 to 30 pounds because he's not going to post up against anybody.
Right now, his offensive game is very much a work in progress. It's unpolished, and it's undecided at this point, like what kind of offensive player he's going to be.
I would take Czar over him right now.
His name is Sar, not Czar. But yeah.
I would take Czar because Czar is more polished.
Sar, S-A-R-R, not Z-A-R-R. Yeah.
Czar, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I would take Czar over him because he's more polished than Wemby. He's more ready than Wemby. By the time Wemby figures it out, it'll probably be 3 or 4 years from now. Czar will probably have won 2 titles by then.
Another one we got to mark down. Sar's going to have 2 titles with the Wizards by the time Wemby figures it out.
Hey, you know what's funny? This time last year, people laughed about the Knicks being a champion. Anything is possible.
But you didn't predict that they'd be a champion this time last year.
Hey, 2 years ago, did we think the Commanders would make it to the NFC title game? This time 2 years ago? No, we didn't.
He's just my favorite.
Anything is possible, my brother.
You're just so good.
And I love you, Kevin.
That's
why I didn't want to go with you with RG3, and I came at you with this.
I don't need, but you didn't come at me with RG3. Whatever you said was like occasionally things you say are kind of nonsensical.
You know why?
What?
You know why, Kevin? You're 63 years old. And I'm 56. And I know at 63, you kind of forget things in your late 40s and early 50s.
Yeah.
Stuff that Robert was doing in 22 and in 12 and 13 was annoying the crap out of you.
Not in 12. Not in 12. Not in 12. I predicted future MVPs in 12. So I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm not 63. Thanks, Mark and Largo. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, go ahead. Try to get a level of sanity to the conversation about the NBA Finals. By the way, RG3's 2012, if we had known during 2012 what was going on behind the scenes, I would have backed off. But I actually said MVP, plural MVPs, watching him in 2012. Go ahead, Paulie.
Big guy.
Hail.
Orange and blue
to
skies,
the W.
man. Hail to the W, man.
Congrats,
Listen,
man. Congrats.
Been waiting my entire life for this.
Yeah, I know. I know. It had to be thrilling.
Thrilling, emotional. I cried for 3 hours. But it was all good, man. Hey, listen, everybody's better than Jalen Brunson until it's time to be better than Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, he was great.
What
did he score? Was it 14 straight that he scored when they were down? When they were down 10, did he score 14 straight? I got to go look at that. It was an unbelievable stretch of shot making. Unbelievable.
All I know is that guy's a leader. If y'all talking about Wemby, you know, if he want to, you can't pattern the game after him, but if you want to pattern how to be a leader, that guy's a leader, man. Because he's seen, like, I got to take this game over. Because everybody else is kind of struggling right now. And we can't get down 29. We got to keep it this striking distance to the fourth. And, you know, so, but listen, I know you don't like that ISO ball, you know, and it ain't been good for us in the past, but it was very important on Saturday night.
So he made, it's just, you know, he made 12 straight points. It was 83-73, and he scored 12 straight points by himself. Obviously, he got to the free throw line on drawing some of those fouls outside of the, you know, beyond the 3-point line. So crafty. He was awesome. He was awesome down the stretch.
Man, listen, man, like a lot of people say, it was Jordan-esque what he did on Saturday night, man. You know, come on, man. You guys, look, the Western Conference is so better than the East. Nobody in the East has a chance. You know, the East is so weak. That's why the Knicks went through everybody like that. This is one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history. I don't care what nobody says.
It is, but let me just say something, because I had this in my notes. It is, by statistics in terms of point margin, the greatest postseason run in NBA history. But all due respect to this Knicks team, I'll never think of them as one of the greatest teams I've ever watched. Not even close. Not even close.
Nah, they are. They're one of the greatest teams. And when I say teams, I mean collectively of how they play together. This was one of, in the past years of individual stars, you know what I mean? Like, team being led by stars. And yeah, I know Jalen Brunson was the best player and he did lead them. But at points of this series, people was debating on who the MVP was going to be. Was it going to be Karl Anthony Towns? Was it going to be OG? You know what I mean? You know, before the series before that, you know, it was Mikal Bridges. Like, they got everybody to step up. You know, at some point in time, you got, you know, somebody different off the bench. Alvarado, Shaman, you know what I mean? Mitchell Roberts. I mean, everybody played a role. So as far as, you know, maybe not the, you know, stacking up against the Jordan teams or Golden State teams collectively as talent.
Or Boston or the Laker teams of the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as just team, the way they play team ball this year, I think they are one of the best teams.
Do you know that not one, I saw this morning, not one of their starting 5 players was drafted by the Knicks? Not one. All acquired.
Not one. Shout out Leon Rose, man.
Yeah, Leon Rose.
Hey, listen, man. Listen.
World Wide West. Yeah.
The only reason why, you know, I've been listening to y'all, I've been listening to this station and listening to you for a long time, you know, and, you know, we all know the Redskins and everything. And I always had sympathy for y'all being Wizards fans because I've been there. I've been through 17 win seasons. I've been through being the laughing stock of the league. And we talking about it in New York, you know. So I've been there. And man, I just wish one day y'all could feel like I'm feeling today.
Well, congrats. Even during your 53-year run without a title, you've had a lot more to cheer about than we have. I mean, a lot more.
Yeah, but it ain't. Yeah, but it ain't the same. It's the same, bro. I'm telling you, y'all. Listen, man. I'm lost for words. That's how excited I am. I'm still excited.
Well, is this
I'll
bigger
let y'all
for you
later,
than the Skins winning the Super Bowl if it were to happen?
Yeah, at this point, yeah, I've seen 3 championships for the Skins. I ain't never seen this for the Knicks, man.
Yeah.
There's been one heartbreak, one failure, one disgusting season after another for me, man. I always say this, I'll say this, somebody used to call me the most passionate fan in sports. I'm not passionate. I'm usually pissed off going from the Redskins to the Knicks than to the Warriors. That's not passion. It's called disappointment.
Oh, it was look. It was impressive. Congrats! That is, me. If the Wizards did that, I mean, it would still be Terps 1, Skins 2, but Wizards are right there. And if they did it, it would be all time because I've waited pretty much the majority of my life to see it again too. Because it's 78, so we're now coming up on a half century. Without a title, and we haven't even been close to one. We haven't even been in a conference final since 79, the last year they were in the final. Sorry, I got to run.
Let me
go
say
ahead.
This real quick. As you were saying, like you asked before about where the Knicks rank in the city. The Knicks are everybody's team, and that's why it means more to me because I got family members. They all Giants fans and things like that, but we're all Knicks fans. So it's a family thing for me too. You know what I mean? My brother.
Yeah.
God rest his
No.
soul,
I mean, it's one of those teams where it's in the blood coming out of the womb. And you know what? I just thought of because a friend of mine texted me. Kevin Durant, when he signed with the Brooklyn Nets, said the Knicks weren't cool. They're cool now. I got to run.
We're cool
Paulie,
now,
everybody.
baby.
Up next. Something Stefan Diggs said over the weekend about our football team. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So on Friday, Stefan Diggs was with the league cleared of any personal conduct policy violations in conjunction with the charges that he was found not guilty on back in March, whenever that result came down. The felony strangulation charge, the misdemeanor assault and battery charge, he was found not guilty on those charges during a 2 or 3 day trial, something like that. And then the league conducted a personal conduct policy review, and on Friday said there was insufficient evidence of a personal conduct policy violation, which means he's not going to be suspended for any games in 2026. By the way, Mike Vrabel was asked about the possibility of Stefan Diggs returning to New England, and he said, quote, "I appreciate Stefan as a person and as a player. Right now, I don't think that's something we're exploring, but I would never say no," closed quote. That from Mike Vrabel on Stefan Diggs. Well, Stefan Diggs was a guest on Channel 5, a show from over the weekend, and here's what he said about playing in Washington.
I never realized how many fans it was back home until I was a free agent, and people were like, "Are you gonna come back home?" Especially when they see me back home. I'm like this. I've been living here for my whole life. I've been living here for 10 years. Like, it was just like this. "Oh, we never see you." I was like, "Man, y'all wasn't looking." So I mean, it's a lot of hopes. We're kind of figuring out, working through some things. I did have a small piece of me like, damn, it would be great to come home and play in front of the fans I used to play in front of as a young adolescent in college, and just, kind of doing something for the city. That definitely would be a moment. Hopefully, things do work out. We'll see how it goes, but I'm kind of open right now.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that he has said is, to me, has given me the vibe of there's like a lot of mutual interest and it's got a good chance of happening. He's saying all the right things, and he's saying how interesting it is. And he said a few weeks ago how interesting it would be to play at home. But I think at his age, he's looking for two things. He's looking for the best possible deal, and he's looking for a place in which he can be featured on a really good football team. Last year was the first time that he's ever played in a Super Bowl as a professional player. But, once again, he was, even in that offense, he was the number one targeted receiver. I don't think he would be that here. Even without the addition of Brandon Ayuk, he would still probably be the second most targeted, and maybe the third behind Terry and Chigakonkwo. He may have a chance to go somewhere and have a much more prominent role, get maybe a multi-year deal for more money. And that's what I am sensing. I'm also sensing that with Washington's situation, at least perception-wise, up in the air as it relates to adding Brandon Ayuk. And by the way, Brandon Ayuk was added again on Instagram, posting himself in a robe, walking around, doing weird motions, saying, "Coming to an end zone near you." This dude seems to need some help. Let's be honest. I mean, he does not appear to be all there. Maybe he's just quirky. Maybe he's just, trying to have some personality. But we've talked about this. I mean, nothing he's doing is helping him right now. We'll see if he does the thing that can help him the most, which is apply for reinstatement, show up for training camp, and force the 49ers' hand like, somebody who would at least appear to be interested in playing football. I'd be fine with Diggs. I would love, at this point, honestly, I'd just be like, just sign Diggs. Let's move on in 26. Forget this crazy person, or he appears to be crazy. Even though Ayuk healthy, and we had Grant Cohn on the show on Friday, he's covered the 49ers forever, does it currently with Sports Illustrated. And after, kind of talking about how, the 49ers are arrogant and they're at fault, but so is Brandon. He certainly leveled some criticism towards Brandon Ayuk and said that, he's clearly, off a little bit right now and quirky. But at the end of the day, he said, there's no way if it were my team, I wouldn't want Brandon Ayuk signed because eventually he's going to play with something to prove. Yeah. But by the way, that IG post from over the weekend, Max, did he say anything or was it just
he was just dancing to music. I don't remember what the caption was. I believe it was maybe Commanders related, but it was not as substantive as his last two posts have been.
Somebody sent this to me and said, it clearly looks like the backdrop is Northern Virginia. It does. There's a window that looks
and
out
trees.
And not even tree. Yeah, and a couple of trees and some pavement
Looks
back
like
there.
my house.
No idea where it is. I know that the last thing we got on Friday was him apparently posting that he was in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah,
God,
that was the location that he included in his Instagram post. Whether or not he was actually in D.C., we don't really know.
I mean, there is an element of, I mean, this is perception. I don't know if it's reality, but he's creating the perception that he's kind of spiraling a little bit out of social media control, and that he's giving off the vibes of, I'm not all there, and maybe it'd be nice if somebody came and helped me. That's that. If that's the case, I don't want any part of it. No part of it. I don't care how little risk the team takes. But again, there's so much we don't know about this, and we don't know what will happen, when he is released. And, there's so much that could happen. He could get released and nobody could want him. He could get released and it could shock everybody that Washington isn't interested. But I would bet if he gets released, Washington at least sits down and talks to him. Because if they weren't planning to do at least that, as Ben said last week, then they would leak to somebody, and a Rappaport or a Schefter at this point, that, hey man, we're not interested. We have moved long beyond that. So let it be known that, no matter what happens with him in San Francisco, Washington's not going to be interested. But they haven't done that. They haven't done that, which tells me that at the very least, they are going to meet with him when he becomes available to be met with. And then they'll determine it from there. And obviously, a lot of that will be physical, evaluation, mental evaluation for sure, and a real conversation about a guy that, at least the quarterback and the general manager know. They both know him pretty well. And so they'll be able to figure out whether or not what he really needs is psychological help, or whether this has all been just a quirky dude that hated his employer and didn't handle it the best way, but he's ready to play football and he is capable of playing football. I guess this would be the first football-related social media post coming to an end zone near you. But, and does he look to be in shape? I don't know. Weirdo. That's for sure. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
below us, Mr. Pochettino. Balogun, can it get inside? Still Balogun, Flo Balogun!
That was the U.S. on Friday night. I actually watched the majority of the game. Actually, that's not true. I watched the first half, and they were up 3-0, and so it was over.
So why would you watch the rest, you know?
Yeah, I mean, usually the first team that scores, you're like, okay, that pretty much is it, more likely than not, because it seems like the majority of games end up 1-0, maybe 1-1. But the U.S. scored 4 goals and beat Paraguay. I thought Paraguay was poorly coached, personally. That was my opinion. I didn't think they were very well coached at all. Kidding, of course. I have no idea what I'm watching. Nothing resembles any sort of, I can't put anything together. I've tried in terms of what they're trying to do, but it just seems like it's a lot of kicking the ball around, and hopefully somebody breaks down and, they get one to go in. 4-1. U.S., I guess, has a decent chance to advance to the knockout round, which this is the most teams ever in a World Cup, 48. 12 groups of 4. We've got group play basically that lasts 2 months. And then once you get through the group play, you get to the knockout stage, which is 32 teams, and then it's one and done, from that point. I think this thing finishes in October at some point. Not true. Finishes July 19th, and yours truly will be at the World Cup final. Thank you very much to my brother who lives in Costa Rica and is going to the final. We'll be taking me, his older brother, to the World Cup final, along with my nephew as well, his son. And I'm looking forward to that because, come on, it's the World Cup final. If you get a chance to go to that, you got to go to that. The stadium's going to be
jumping. Have you seen any, all of the games that have been played have pretty much been sold out. There has not been an
but
empty
the games
seat.
At SoFi wasn't sold out Friday night.
That is true, and that's on Team USA. But the crowd just has been unbelievable.
Yeah, the crowds, it's the best part of it. It's the best part of it.
That's what drew me into the World Cup. The first one I watched was South Africa and the Vuvuzelas.
Now,
I was like, what's this? This is awesome.
Yeah, now I can't sit there. I'm going to be honest with you. I can't sit there and watch an entire game start to finish. But, I saw the highlights of the Japan goal against the Netherlands.
That was
tied
a good game.
I saw the highlight of the Ivory Coast guy that scored in the 90th minute to beat Ecuador. And I think, the favorite is playing today. Spain is playing today.
They're about to kick off in about 5 minutes.
Ooh, okay. When does Messi play his first game? When's Argentina play?
Ooh, I'm looking right now. I know Team USA
tomorrow
plays
night.
Friday.
I got the answer before you did.
Look
Tomorrow
at
night,
you.
9:00 against Algeria, and then Portugal with Ronaldo plays their first game on Wednesday.
France also plays tomorrow.
France plays tomorrow. England plays. Okay, so look, I feel like this is an every 4-year thing with me. There are several things that I just don't get, but the thing that I like is how important it is to the rest of the world. I like the crowds. I like the pageantry of it. The flopping is such a turnoff. It's just such a turnoff. It's embarrassing for athletes, professional athletes, to act the way they do when more times than not there's no contact and sometimes there's minimal contact. That is a hard watch. Always has been for me. The lack of scoring, although the Germans scored 7 goals yesterday against Curacao. I think that was the first time they've ever been, maybe the smallest country ever to be in the World Cup. I think somebody said.
Yeah, I think their population was double of the stadium capacity.
Yeah. So the flopping is a major turnoff. If you think that's stupid, so be it. I'm just telling you. I'm just being honest. To see guys roll around on the field as if they had been shot by an AK-47, and then you see the replay and there's literally no contact. That's embarrassing. The scoring, the lack of it, has always been a problem for Americans. I'll tell you, I think my biggest pet peeve, more than anything else, and I understand it's not my game. I get it. I just can't stand the imprecise nature of the timing of the game. We go to replay for tenths of a second. That's overdoing it. But we have clocks that go to tenths of a second when we get to under a minute in sports. the fact that they just randomly throw a plus something on there at the end of the half and at the end of the game,
How long do you guys think it was? 5 minutes.
And then it's not exactly that. They'll give a team if they have +6 in your 96 minutes, and the other team that's losing has the ball, they'll let them do their final possession to see if something happens. I just like
vibes-based sport. I kind of like it.
I know people that love soccer say that's ridiculous. I don't love soccer. I'm used to, hey, we're down in the game, and we have exactly 2 minutes and 38 seconds left to try to tie it up. No one in the game and nobody watching the game ever knows exactly how much time's left for the team that's down to tie it up. And now, by the way, I didn't know this until I watched over the weekend or the U.S. game. They have what's called hydration timeouts.
This is
now a game that gets split into quarters. They have a 3-minute hydration timeout halfway through each half. Now, people are really complaining because Fox is turning it into a revenue-generating opportunity because they're running commercials. Of course they should, and I'm sure FIFA's benefiting from that as well. But when you get these hydration timeouts, the clock keeps running. How about at least stopping it for that? Since you're going to stop the game for 3 exact minutes for both teams to get hydration, why not at least at that moment? Okay, so for a 45-minute half, it should get stopped at 22:30. But it doesn't. It gets stopped sometimes at 23:10 or 21:19. I've seen it stopped all over the place. But how about at least not having the clock run, and you come back after the commercial and it's 28 minutes and you haven't played for 3 minutes or 4 minutes or something like that? Because there is a random nature to the timing. It's never exactly right because you get the flopping, which is no action. The clock should stop there after a goal, the celebration, because every goal, most teams believe that that's going to be the winning goal, especially if it gives you the lead, even if it's 1-0 in the first 5 minutes. More times than not, it's going to be the determining factor in the game, that first goal. But how about at least like giving the viewer and giving the teams at least a sense of like how much time's actually really left in the game? Is it really going to stop at 90? Is it really going to stop at 93 if it says +3 or +5? It's going to be 95. No, is the answer. No, it never actually stops on the time that it says it should stop. But whatever. Dumb American doesn't understand the beautiful game, which I'll tell you, that's the other thing. The lecturing from some of the people on these broadcasts. I mean, come on, man. I mean, if I see one more literally, out of breath, desperation, excitement in talking about a set piece, which is, by the way, a corner kick, where they have a set piece. The set pieces 98% of the time basically do nothing. There's nothing that exciting about the set piece. But, God, you'd think it was, and watching it, that this is the play, this is the corner kick that's going to determine the World Cup. But I can't wait to go to the final, and I have tuned in a little bit here because the whole drama of it, the pageantry of it, the importance of it, the singing, looking at these countries and the fans, it's cool. That part of it's really cool. Yeah, I thought the Paraguay team was not well coached on Friday night. Ben Standing next. Benton Standings with us, as he is every Monday. Mini camp underway tomorrow. That'll be the last of the teamwork before they reconvene and then come back at the end of July for training camp. Ben wrote this morning, creating wide receiver 2 in the aggregate. We actually talked a little bit about this on Friday, but let's just say that they don't add another receiver to the mix. Just net out how they create wide receiver number 2 in the aggregate, trying to replace Giambi, as Billy Beane said in Moneyball.
Well, what's so funny? That was a good movie.
It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah, I think when you mentioned to me that on Friday, I said, thank you, Billy Beane.
Probably right. Yeah. So look, again, ideally you have one guy that can fill that role and handle most of everything that you're looking for out of a receiver. But if not, like, you can't just throw, we got 2 or 3 other guys and we'll be fine. The key is you got to have guys who can do different things. I thought last year, when it's not that they let De'Ami Brown leave, it's that they didn't replace his specific skill set of a outside guy who can get down the field. And that's an example of where last year they just didn't have the right pieces. So when the injuries struck in particular, they were not well equipped to deal with it. The other day, David Blau, though, made a comment while discussing the room, and he said that they assembled the room kind of like the way you do with a basketball roster, where you don't want to have everybody who does the same thing. You got to have guys who can do different things. And so, again, just to go back to De'Ami Brown, again, we've seen most of the story. It's been largely underwhelming, except for that really good stretch in the playoffs in 24, and he was the guy who could get down the field. And for his career, 29% of his catches have gone for 16 or more yards. The league average last year was 23%. So, again, we're not talking about finding a guy who's like demonstrably better than everybody else, but hey, okay, this is something that he does well that they could take advantage of. Another guy we haven't talked about a ton collectively, Van Jefferson. We'll see if he's able to squeeze in the roster. But what does he bring? He brings reliability. He has not, according to Pro Football Reference, he has not dropped a pass since the 2023 season. Again, it's not a high volume, but not a huge volume, obviously, but still, didn't drop anything. Last year, he had the 4th most targets for a player who didn't drop a pass. And, again, it's one thing to have all the athletic ability in the world, but if you don't, if you're not consistent on 3rd and 8, then that's not going to help the cause, even if you can make a great play. So those are a couple of examples where they have different guys who could do different things. And so if they don't get Ayuk or Diggs, somebody who would be more of the go-to guy there, then I think they do have enough pieces to make it work because they have enough guys who can do different things. Again, this is all assuming that Jaden Daniels does what Jaden Daniels does. If he, if we're talking about the backup or Daniels is limited, well, it's another story. But yes. So.
I when they signed Van Jefferson, I talked about him on that next day because for whatever reason, especially when he was with the Rams and with Sean and with Jared Goff primarily, he was with Matt Stafford too. I actually liked Van Jefferson. He always struck me as a guy that was on teams with some really good receivers, I guess until last year, and just kind of got, hidden behind, the really good receivers that, say the Rams had. But he's got size, and I think I've made this comparison before. There's a little Keenan Allen in him that he just doesn't drop passes. He's solid as a route runner. He's good contested catch-wise. And, there's nobody that's in this wide receiver room that I can't, say definitively, that's a long shot to make the team. I'm talking about the guys we know and the guys you wrote about specifically. Now, other than Terry, who would you say is the real separator? That's the one thing I'm having a difficult time. Who's the guy is around? Maybe it's Antonio Williams, but who's the guy that's really going to create the separation? By the way, like Brandon Ayuk would, if he were actually the player he was in 2023. Did you have somebody that fit that bill among, all of the others?
Yeah, I mean, again, Antonio Williams is like the one guy opposite. We just don't have any data on the NFL level, but what he was when he was coming into the draft, the talk was that his route running is impressive. He's got good speed, a 4.4 140 at the combine, but he's like quicker than fast, and that his ability to be able to stay at a consistent speed on the move, even when changing directions, I think is going to be key. Now the question is, how effective is he going to be on the outside? Because if this team plays more two tight ends, which I think they will, you're looking then at two receivers, and if that other receiver is the other outside, can he do that? In 2024, his splits were roughly 50-50 between outside and the slot, but for most of his career at Clemson, he was predominantly in the slot. They think he could play outside. That's the question, but I think he's the answer, because that's the thing. Like all these other guys, Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey, I think they're still a wait and see because they're still young guys. I mean, Lane's only going into his second year, but with the other vets, we can see the warts. It's unlikely that they're going to all of a sudden develop this monster game. But I think the other component, though, to your point of who's going to get open, is the scheme. I mean, they really believe that they're going to be able to scheme guys open, and if that's the case, then again, this is where you don't necessarily have to have some Pro Bowler at the other receiver spot. But that's again, when David Blau's a new guy, we haven't seen it yet. It's not like we can sit here and say, well, it's Kyle Shanahan does X, Y, or Z. We don't know exactly, but that's their hope.
Okay, so like we've talked about this a lot, and you made the point last week. There hasn't actually been any real reporting on this, other than the report that there was an arrest warrant issued for him, which, by the way, there's been no follow-up report. Like, has he actually been arrested yet? We're talking, of course, about Brandon Ayuk. And so we really don't know anything, and we don't know how this will play out. But, you writing about creating wide receiver 2 in the aggregate off of kind of something that Blau said, are you nearing believing, because I think you think what I think or have thought, which is because it hasn't been shot down, that there's a chance Ayuk's going to be on this roster before the season begins. Where are you on that? The chances they add another receiver like Ayuk or Diggs or somebody else, but those would be the two, before the season begins or not. Where are you? Break it down in terms of your belief. Percent chance they don't add anybody versus the percent chance that they do.
Well, putting Ayuk aside, just because that's such a wacky bit, I don't know. I think they would probably, Ayuk aside, I feel like maybe 30% chance that they add somebody else. I mean, maybe that's even high. I think they like what they have and at least want to give it a shot.
That's kind of a change for you, don't you think?
Well, maybe it's because I just wrote a story about how they can recreate in the aggregate. Maybe I'm buying, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid here a little bit. But, again, between Williams, McCaffrey, and Lane, that's three guys they've drafted in recent years. I mean, Adam Peters is going to want to see these things through. And, again, Diami can do certain things, Burks, Van Jefferson. So I feel like they think they have enough there. Plus, again, Chigakonkwo basically may be essentially the number 2 receiver. And if he's living up to the hype, then, or to their belief, then they may even be more set than that. The Ayuk thing, though, like on the one hand, because there's been no denial, nobody knocking it down, no other team even remotely being mentioned, the guy's putting on a Commander's hat in a photo, Jaden Daniels, all these things leads you to believe, okay, I guess it's heading towards him coming here. But again, who the hell knows? There's been no reporting. We've yet to see him. Again, this would be the perfect guy to actually post a workout video. We've seen nothing to actually suggest that he is going to play football this year. I mean, we assume it, and he has said versions of, I'll be catching touchdowns somewhere else, but
coming to an end zone
really
near you. Yeah.
Okay, here you go. I mean, I haven't talked to anybody in the league and maybe they're not investigating it because they're not interested. But I haven't talked to anybody in the league who's like, yeah, I would take a risk. I would take that shot. Everybody's like, run for the hills. Like, what are we talking about here? So without knowing exactly where this team is at, maybe we find out in a few weeks they were out and we just didn't know it. But I have no idea what to make of him. I'm assuming he's coming here because, again, just the way the news cycle has gone. But there really isn't a news cycle, and that's why I don't know what to make of him.
Who's going to start at left guard, Chris Paul or Brandon Coleman?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think this comes down to is Brandon. What has Brandon Coleman showed them since last year? Obviously he was benched after week 2, struggling at guard. It was also the fact that he was not able to always play through some injuries. And Chris Paul did a totally solid job, especially in the passing game. But Coleman's athleticism is pretty impressive, and he would be a better fit stylistically for what they're trying to do now with the zone blocking, getting guys onto the second level and things like that. But he's got to do it. So I feel like Chris Paul is sort of like the baseline, but if Coleman steps up, then I would think he could get the job. But again, this is where we got to get to training camp and see what they look like. We just have until we see them with pads on or any kind of contact. It's kind of impossible with the offensive line to say what's going to happen. But I think Coleman definitely could take it if he is if he's in good shape, which I assume he is. He could play through some nicks, and he shows them that his athleticism is going to be absolutely worth it at that spot.
Do you see defensively them lining up in a base 3-4? Let me start with that because obviously that was a Brian Flores base defense, a 3-4 with a true nose tackle. And apparently they played base as much as anybody in the league did last year. Is that the base defense, a 3-4? And if so, is Tim Settle the nose tackle?
Yeah, so I think this to me is a really interesting question because based on the Minnesota vibe, it does feel like 3-4 would be like the base. I mean, again, they'll do some 4-3 as well, but like 3-4 is a base with 3 true defensive linemen, meaning not like Owe and Sheehan at the end with Deron Payne or something like right. Legit, essentially 3 defensive tackle types. But what's interesting is if they do that, then Tim Settle or whoever else is going to be playing, Kinlaw, whoever, are they necessarily your best defenders, right? Because if you do it that with the 3 down linemen, then you cannot have Owe, Chason, Styles, Chanel, and Luvu all playing. That's too many guys, one too many guys. So how do you make that work? Right, and that's not even factoring in Dorrance Armstrong when he gets back, or anybody else who might be involved, Jordan McGee, So that's where I'm sort of intrigued by. Is there a point of wait, the talent level is better over here? But I think at a minimum, a 3-4. And I tried. I spoke to Eric Henderson the other day, the defensive line coach, and kind of said to him, how much of a difference is it between what you're looking for at nose versus defensive tackle, and does that benefit or rule out anybody kind of here? And he said, no, everybody can basically play the nose to a degree. It's just a matter of, the nose is about absorbing blocks more than it is creating pressure. And, is Deron Payne, is that the best way to use Deron Payne? I don't think so, right? You want him to be, as much as he can be, a guy that's causing havoc, not a guy that's, letting the other people cause havoc. So Settle, DJ Davidson, who they added from the Giants as a low-key free agent, like those 2 guys have more nose tackle history than the others. But again, that's why it's interesting, because it feels like on the surface they would be better off going a 4-3, get their better guys on the field. But that's my view. I don't know that they think that way.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to watch, because you do want, if you have a true zero technique nose tackle, you want him to take on 2 guys. You want the center and a guard needing to block that player. We'll see whether or not that happens, because Deron has drawn some doubles over the course of his career. Not at that position, though. I want to go back to offense for a moment, because you've seen you were out there for the OTA days that you could watch, and you'll be out there the next couple of days. I've had this sense going back to last summer and even heading into this off season that there's a belief that Cager, number 89, the big tight end, actually has a shot to make the team. Did you see any evidence of that?
You like yourself some Lawrence Cager.
Well, I'm just sharing with you what I believe they think about him.
No, I mean,
because I've heard his
Dan
name
Quinn
mentioned unsolicited a few times.
Yeah, no, Dan Quinn, it was either the owner's meeting or at the combine. I think the owner's meeting brought him up by name. I think the question for me is, are they keeping 4 tight ends? Because I've already sort of just looked ahead to, the 53 to some degree, and there's going to be a lot more guys who are going to get cut that would raise an eyebrow in other years. And this year it's just going to be like there's not enough room in the end. So I think one question is, are they keeping 4 tight ends? They have in the last couple of years, Colson Yankoff being the 4th, but they've got 3 at the top with Okonkwo, Bates, and Sinnott, and they may think, hey, we got to keep an extra defensive lineman or another cornerback or what have you. So we'll see. I still like Yankoff, and I still would peg him as the 4th guy, but and Cager's a little bit older. It's not like he's like a 23-year-old still on the rise.
Right.
He's a bit older. So again, Quinn mentioned him, so you gotta keep that in mind. And when you look at the guy, you think, oh wow, how is this guy not in the Pro Bowl? I mean, he's huge. He's got looks like he has all the tools, but it obviously hasn't developed. So sure, I don't think it's impossible. It's not like Yankoff is a made man, but he's been on the roster the last 2 years, excellent athlete, and I wonder if tight end becomes a position where they get where they decide we're going to put somebody on the practice squad and not keep a 4th. So we'll see about that.
All right. Mini camp starts tomorrow. Ben will be with us hopefully before Friday, maybe on Wednesday. We'll see what his schedule is like, but this will be the last opportunity for interviews, players, and then they all get their true downtime before training camp begins end of July. So we'll talk some draft at some point next week in terms of the NBA draft, because you've written about it on Ben's Substack. Again, Ben covers this team, and that's 98% of his Substack, but he's covered basketball in this town as well. And it's why I'm telling you, it's worth the, few bucks a month to subscribe. You can get a link to it at Ben Standing. So no draft talk, just your finals takeaway, or more than that, takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, the Jalen Brunson story is incredible. To watch his development. I mean, it's not a lot of guys in the league who've won a national championship in college. He won 2. He was the best player on at least one of those teams, right? And yet falls in the second round, gets in the league, goes to Dallas, shows he can play. But okay, still he's being completely undervalued, and I was there to a degree too. I think one of the things that's underrated with the Knicks is that I think they built their team, intentional or not, sort of the way the 76ers did with the Iverson team that made the finals.
Somebody compared them similarly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's true that it is much more challenging for the smaller guard to become the best player because it's just easier to defend. But what the Sixers did, and I think what the Knicks did to a degree, was built the right team around him. All the Knicks guys, like I compared it in the story I wrote, because I used the Knicks analogy in the story I wrote about the receiver room. Like basically, Jalen Brunson is in the movie Gladiator. Jalen Brunson is Maximus, and all the other Knicks are the guys in the arena who are fighting, but they understand who the lead is, and they're doing what they can to maximize him. So I think that was just a great. They just understood the assignment, and Jalen Brunson just an all-time performance. I mean, we talk about guys who would never have to buy a drink again in the city. That is the ultimate version when you give the Knicks the first title in 53 years. Congrats to him. On the Spurs front, I mean, I said to you before the series started that I think on some level it's going to come down to not so much the Spurs kids, but their supporting cast and their vets. And will they step up? And my God, did they not step up? I mean, De'Aaron Fox forget it, the game 4, play with 10 seconds left and going for the layup instead of getting fouled was an all-time dumb play. But just he's never been a guy for me as a point guard. Erratic, his shooting was terrible. And then like Harrison Barnes, I kept making fun of him too. He didn't even play. He couldn't even get off the bench. Even though they were definitely...
You kept focusing on him. He wasn't getting much playing time at all during the postseason.
But he played 25 minutes a game during the season. This is my point.
Yeah.
They put them. It's not, it's like happened last year with the Commanders. Terry and Noah Brown get hurt, and now all of a sudden Chris Moore has to step in. You're like, well, wait a minute, why is this guy in here? Well, they made it that way, right? They could have had other people, but that's what they did. So I'm just saying that they didn't have enough pieces. I mean, I understand that there's reason to criticize Wembanyama, both in terms of some of the late game fumbles he had, and also, dirty plays, poor sport. I get it, for sure. Castle and Harper, I thought, acquitted themselves very well. They're all young. You'd like to think that they'll mature both in terms of their game and their competitiveness, who they are, what have you. But the fact that they got all the way to this point, when again, to see how bad their supporting cast was exposed, I think really it says so much. And they easily could have won this series. Again, I think this to me was a series of, in college basketball terms, this was a team with all seniors beating a team with all freshmen. Like and experience matters. The Knicks won all the games late because they had the experience and the Spurs didn't. So kudos to the Knicks. What a run. And, the Spurs, I still think are going to be incredibly dangerous, but it will be interesting to see how Wembanyama kind of comes out of this.
Yeah, the De'Aaron Fox take, I know it's a very common take. I have a slightly different view. Not that I thought he played well, because I don't. I think he was absolutely a key to the Game 7 win in Oklahoma City, which may have been the best game of the postseason for him. But it's too long to get into it. I definitely agree with you that maturity, that's where we saw the biggest difference. And I think it's just an amazing sports story that literally 2 weeks ago, there was a rush to basically anoint Wembanyama as the greatest talent at that size that we've ever seen. And he's going to be a presumption that he's going to be the GOAT one day. Look, I was urging, all of my listeners that hate the NBA, no, you got to watch him. You have to watch him. I've done the same thing with Jokic in recent years. And there is, a one-of-one nature to a lot of what he does. But what was really exposed, Ben, is just from a basketball standpoint, he's so unpolished offensively. And there has to be a decision made on what kind of offensive player is he. Is he going to be a center? Is he going to be a power forward? Is he going to be a 3 or a 2? His preference clearly is to play on the perimeter. And for a 7'5" guy, he's great on the perimeter. But for an NBA guard, he's not great. He's okay. And then, of course, there's no doubt that he was exposed to be, dirty, chippy, competitive, all those good things, but definitely dirty. And I think that there's always this fine line in sports between confidence and arrogance. And I think the greatest have always crossed that line many times. And I thought he was too arrogant during these finals and leading into them. But he's 22. It's a 22-year-old, everything I described is immaturity, and be patient because things change, and he is outrageously skilled and talented. But other than the New York piece of it, which is primarily New Yorkers and Knicks fans, I think the Wembanyama story is almost just as interesting in terms of these 5 games that were played. And he went from he wouldn't have been better off from an experience standpoint. But in terms of the perception of him, he'd have been better off had they lost Game 7 against Oklahoma City. But again, things change.
Yeah, I mean, this is we always talk about in sports, especially in the era that you and I grew up in, where there was you're a young team, you make the playoffs, and the next year you win around, and the next year you get to the conference finals, and then you go to Super Bowl. They skipped a bunch of steps, the Spurs, so he didn't have those experiences to sort of handle it. We'll hope that he can going forward. I actually think from a basketball perspective, I really haven't changed my view of him at all, in large part because the Spurs roster was completely ill-equipped to help him. He literally basically played the entire series next to 4 guards. Like there was no
That
other
is
forward.
true. They basically
I mean,
played 4 guards around him, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the Anunoby, not only because of what he did in Game 6, or Game 4, but because he was the one guy that the Spurs had no actual corresponding player for. They didn't have one big man that could play with Wembanyama. Again, their point guards were De'Aaron Fox, who's erratic, and then 2 guys who just got in the league 10 minutes ago. So give him a couple of vets, give him a couple of pieces. Keldon Johnson, the 6th man of the year, wasn't even close to being helpful. So let me see him against with guys who are better fits, and then I can make a better judgment. I'm with you though. Like it feels like he's more into the Kevin Durant than he is a guy around the rim. That's true, but let's see him put on some weight. Let's see him get another power guy next to him and see how it plays out. I mean, it was easy for the Knicks. All they had to do was beat him up because there was nobody else that they had to worry about, and that's going to be the case probably always. But there should be better options than what they had.
And look, the bottom line is the Spurs led for 72% of the series, and I don't like this win probability thing, but they had, greater than an 80% probability in all 5 games, and they lost 4 of them. The series could have gone a number of ways, but the absolute, closer on the floor was Brunson, not Wembanyama. That's for sure.
I will say this. I think the Spurs' biggest problem going forward is that Fox is not a number 2 on a title team, and he's got a massive contract that I don't know how they're going to get rid of.
Yeah.
I think the Spurs have a bigger Fox problem than the Thunder have a Chet problem. And I didn't think I'd be saying that.
Yeah.
Because Chet's issue is basically against one guy. Fox's issue is going to be all the time. And I think they have to get somebody better with him, with Wembanyama than Fox. But here's
a question for you. If Oklahoma City had won that series, let's just say Jalen Williams had been healthy and they won that series. I'm not just saying for Game 7, but for the whole series. Who'd win the matchup between Oklahoma City healthy and the Knicks?
I think the Knicks. I mean, based on how it played out, I have not been as high on the Thunder as others, and I think the Spurs beat them with a bunch of kids and role players who it's not like they were like that great in that series either.
No, they earned it. They deserved it. I think if Jalen Williams, the second best player on Oklahoma City's roster, if he plays in that series, I think there would have been a different result. But I actually think Oklahoma City would have beaten the Knicks, and I think they're dangerous next year after what happened this year. We'll see. To your point, San Antonio's got to add to it, and Oklahoma City's got to figure out the Chet Holmgren issue for sure.
Yeah. Also, I mean, we haven't mentioned the coach. Like, I remember way back when LeBron had his breakout game in the playoffs against the Pistons when he scored 20-something points in a row.
23 of 25, whatever it was. Yeah.
What so annoyed me about that was that Flip Saunders, rest in peace, was the coach. He never changed the defense. He never sent double teams at LeBron. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, this same thing here. The amount of times that Brunson is getting one-on-one, especially in the fourth quarter, you're like, what are you doing? Nobody else on this team can score. So I think the coach, that was a huge problem for him. So if the OKC coach would have done a better job of having his guys defend Brunson, and of course he has Caruso, he's got SGA, he has guys, that would be a reason to pick OKC if their coach made adjustments when the Spurs coach did not.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. I got to go. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody. Speaking of NBA basketball, we are about 9 days away from the draft, 8 days away from the draft, and both AJ DeBonsa and Darren Peterson think the Wizards are going to take them, number 1. More on that next.
Washington? Why? It's a huge market. They love basketball more than you. It's like a dormant volcano ready to how much they love basketball. It's a basketball like town. It's just they've been terrible. I don't think you realize what you could do there. That market hasn't had anybody since like West Unseld. Thank you.
Mark Spears is an NBA writer and has been a part of ESPN and a lot of different outlets. That was him talking to AJ DeBonsa. He's right. He's right. And I know that not everybody understands that when they move here, but anybody that's from here or been here long enough knows that, at its core, DC is a basketball town. More people are interested, more people participate, more people have history with basketball more than any other sport. Youth basketball through high school basketball is as good, if not better, than any place else in the country. We know that. I mean, every year you look at the Max Preps top 25 in high school boys basketball, high school girls basketball, and there are 3 or 4 DMV teams throughout, more than any other metro area in the country. And we've had not only great youth through high school basketball, we've had 2 national championship college programs over the years with Maryland and Georgetown. And we all know, those of us who have been here long enough, Maryland and Georgetown have been much more popular than the Bullets/Wizards have ever been because of the lack of success, for now going on 48 seasons since the last time the Bullets/Wizards were truly relevant. I do think, and I've always felt this way, if the Wizards ever became an actual contender, a legitimate NBA championship contender, it would absolutely soar to number 2 in this town behind the football team. That was Mark Spears saying what he said to AJ DeBonsa. But how about this story from ESPN's Shams Charania and Jeremy Wu this morning? Top draft prospect Darren Peterson from Kansas has visited the Washington Wizards, who own the number 1 pick in next week's NBA draft, but does not, does not plan to grant any other team a meeting. This guy's got so many questions to answer about all the games he missed at Kansas this year, and he's only granting one team, the team at the top of the board, an interview. I don't know. There's just something every time we read something about Darren Peterson, it is not something that leaves you thinking, oh, this guy's got to be your pick. There's always something, but there's a lot of but with Darren Peterson. There's not much but with AJ DeBonsa. AJ DeBonsa talked, during this discussion. This was him talking about, and this was with him and Jeremiah Fears, who plays for the Pelicans. This was him talking about making the Wizards a playoff team.
What?
If I go to DC and make the playoffs, y'all gotta make it. I want to make sure I make it. You gotta make it. Y'all can James over y'all. It's not gonna be enough. You're telling me how to win the league when you had the second worst record, bro? That's because we ain't had no big game.
Is that a shot at Derek Queen I heard there?
That was a bit of a shot at Derek Queen, actually, now that I think about it. Although Derek Queen doesn't play necessarily like a true big. But whatever. That was Fears, who was picked, remember, last year, out of Oklahoma at number 4 or 5. Where was Fears picked in the draft last year? I don't know. Top 10, right? Making the playoffs, just so everybody understands, more than half the teams in the league make the playoffs. Actually, 2/3 of the teams make the play-in or playoffs. 20 total out of the 30 teams. AJ DeBonsa is not going to be the difference between the Wizards being a contender and not being a contender in year one. That's going to come down to Anthony Davis more than anybody else. This was DeBonsa, who believes he's going to Washington as well. What he said was the first moment he knew he was headed towards DC.
After Dallas and Atlanta went back-to-back, I knew I was going to DC.
So we're taking the bus.
I knew it, bro. Dallas was 8. My mom next up Dallas 8. I'm like, oh, all right. Atlanta 7. I said, I'm going to DC. John Wall looked at me, bro. John Wall looked at me. I was trying not to laugh. I said, it's quiet, bro. I'm going to DC.
So AJ DeBonsa thinks he's going number 1 to DC. Darren Peterson only will meet with Washington. It's going to be one of those two players. I don't, it seems like all the reporting is leaning DeBonsa at this point. But I'll tell you one thing about Winger and Dawkins. You don't get a lot of info from either one of them. They're not a leaky organization. They're not. So nothing's would surprise me at this point. 8 days away from this, nothing would surprise me, including a trade. I think if you believe, as I've said many times since they got number 1 overall, if you believe there is a player that you think has, let's just say, at least a 50-50 chance of becoming a bona fide down the road 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, because that's usually when it happens. You don't get this from young players. It's veteran players when they start to enter that prime, 23, 24 years old. DeBonsa is 19? Peterson is 19, or is he 20? I don't know. But if you think there's somebody in that draft that you feel like has a reasonable chance to become an eventual MVP contender, you take that player at number 1, no matter who he is. If you don't think there's a player that has a chance to become that, you look to trade the number 1 pick. By the way, somebody's got to be willing to trade for that number 1 pick. I think everything's on the board. I really do. I'll share with you my opinions on this draft going back to the moment they got number 1. I think Cameron Boozer has a high floor, but a low ceiling among the top 5 or 6 prospects. So I would not look at Cameron Boozer and say he can be an MVP one day. He can be a really good piece on a good team. And there's a lot about Cameron Boozer that I'd love to have on my team, but that's not what you do when you have number 1. Number 1, you are searching for that generational player. I don't think he's that. I do think there's a chance that A.J. DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson, from North Carolina, and I actually believe Acuff Jr., the point guard from Arkansas, is going to potentially be a 28-point-a-night guy. But he's a smaller player. We just saw a small player win the title. I love Acuff. Love him. I mean, I see Dame Lillard when I watch Acuff. But Dame Lillard never played in the finals. So there is that, because Acuff is not interested in defense at this point. Those would be the players I would be interested in at number 1, because I think there's a chance they could be great players down the road, players that are all-stars, players that might be MVP candidates at some point in their career. Darren Peterson, though, man, so many red flags on this dude. So many. I wanted to play something that Javon Kinlaw said over the weekend. Who was this to, Max?
This was on the OTP or the OTF podcast on the Fence podcast. It's a Commanders focused show.
Okay. All right. So this was Kinlaw on this show.
I mean, I ain't really gonna say too much, like you said, but like, only thing I'm gonna talk about is just the mindset, bro. Like, you could just tell it's a different mindset in terms of what we want to get done and how we want to go about it and how we want to work. And yeah, you just can see it every day. Everybody go out and work, and man, the defense is super gangster. It's super gangster, bro. And man, I can't wait. Like, I can't wait, bro. It's super gangster, bro.
Super gangster, the defense in June. Let me just say this. I like Kinlaw. And these kind of comments as standalones don't bother me, really. They're fine. Personally, have always been about less promising and more delivering. But that's not what this organization has been about for a long time. We hope that it's changed now that the bad guys are gone. I prefer going stealth and shocking people like in October. Didn't see that one coming. Nobody told us they were going to be great. But we've had Kinlaw definitely getting a bit chesty about his new defense, new defensive coordinator. And it's a totally revamped defense. New players, new coordinators, the whole thing. It would be, for guys that haven't any clue what it's been like around here, it'd be one of those things where it's like, look, these comments are fine in most situations, but you are talking to a fan base that literally for 25 years has been getting these kind of nuggets in the offseason. They've been promised and overpromised for a quarter of a century, and literally almost every single time underdelivered on. And, sometimes a little bit of an understanding of what and who he's reaching, which are Redskin fans, Skins fans, might matter in those things. But these are the kind of comments that you remember if they're sitting there in November with, once again, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I'm not expecting that. I mean, I love what they did in the offseason, not just understanding that it was a major problem, but doing something about it. I mean, there should be 5, 6, 7 new significant contributors / starters. We've got a new defensive coordinator. There's a chance it's going to be much different, a good chance that it's going to be much different, although it would be hard for them to repeat what they did last year. I mean, it would be really hard to suck as much as they did last year on defense. But I'm excited about the defensive changes. I hope Kinlaw and his, real optimism here in the offseason, I hope he's right. They'll get a chance to actually prove it, though, on the field when they start playing games in September. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.